The most dangerous word in politics is not hatred. It is not even violence. It is the word inevitable. Again and again in modern history, immense suffering has been justified not as cruelty, but as obedience. Obedience to history. Obedience to destiny. Obedience to what must happen. Wars are declared necessary. Revolutions are declared unavoidable. Sacrifices are declared meaningful because the future demands them. In the 20th century, this way of thinking helped destroy entire societies. One philosopher spent his life trying to dismantle it. His name was Karl Popper. Why Popper is writing. Popper did not write in a vacuum. He was born in Vienna at the beginning of the 20th century, a world that would soon tear itself apart. He lived through the collapse of empires, ideological street violence, fascism and communism rising side by side, intellectuals confidently explaining why all of this was necessary. Popper watched ideas kill people, not because those ideas were openly evil, but because they were held with certainty. What disturbed him the most was not cruelty alone. It was moral certainty backed by theory, the belief that history itself authorizes coercion. Who Popper was not a revolutionary. He was not a party intellectual. He was not a builder of utopias. He was argumentative. He was difficult. He could be sharp and uncompromising. But he was also deeply restrained. He distrusted grand systems, including his own. He believed human beings are fallible, limited, and prone to error. And because of that, no one should be allowed to rule in the name of historical truth. Popper's warning equally applied, interestingly, to the chosenness in Nazi ideology as well as that of Judaism. In other traditions, claims of being a chosen people or of fulfilling divine promises have sometimes been recast, not as moral responsibility, but as political entitlement. Popper was not condemning religion, faith, or identity. He was condemning the moment when any group, racial, national, or religious, claims exemption from criticism because of history, nature, or God is said to have already decided. Once chosenness becomes a justification rather than a restraint, fallibility disappears, conscience is overridden, and human beings are reduced to instruments of a destiny declared beyond question. The core idea, history as a weapon. Popper's central fear was simple, but devastating. When people believe they know the direction of history, disagreement becomes ignorance, dissent becomes obstruction, and coercion becomes a duty. In this way, human beings stop being moral agents. They become material. Material for progress. Material for the nation. Material for the future. Popper called this way of thinking Historicism. Not the study of history, but the belief that history follows discoverable laws, and that certain people are entitled to enforce them. Karl Popper did not oppose progress as improvement. What he rejected was progress treated as destiny. When progress is said to be inevitable, criticism becomes ignorance, resistance becomes obstruction, and suffering becomes acceptable because history is supposed to be moving in the right direction. In that moment, human beings stop being ends in themselves and become means. Material for progress, material for the nation, material for the future. Popper insisted that real progress, if it exists at all, must remain fallible, reversible, and open to criticism. The moment progress excuses cruelty, it ceases to be moral and becomes merely historical. For Popper, the danger was not only the belief that history is marching towards perfection, it was also the older idea found in Plato, that perfection lies behind us, and that time itself is a process of decay. In that view, politics becomes an attempt to restore a lost order rather than to correct present harms. Change becomes corruption, dissent becomes decadence, and authority is justified by those who claim access to timeless truth. Popper rejected both myths, the perfect future and the perfect past. He argued that once politics is guided by either destiny or restoration, freedom disappears and human beings are forced to serve an ideal they did not choose. Why this thinking leads to war. Once history is treated as destiny, war becomes easier to justify. Because if the future is known, then resistance is irrational, opposition is reactionary, and suffering is regrettable but necessary. Popper rejected this entirely. He did not believe wars purify societies, violence reveals truth, sacrifice redeems history. He believed the opposite, that once we stop admitting we might be wrong, we become capable of almost anything. Popper is often misunderstood, so let's be clear. He is not saying that history has no meaning, that societies should never change, that injustice should be tolerated. He is saying something narrower and more demanding, that no vision of the future grants moral permission to override individual conscience, that reforms must be reversible, that power must be criticizable, that certainty is more dangerous than error. Why this still matters. Popper wrote in response to fascism and communism, but his warning did not expire with them. Even today we hear familiar language, necessary interventions, inevitable conflicts, no alternatives. Popper reminds us that the moment history begins to speak with authority, freedom becomes a technical problem, and human beings become expendable. Karl Popper did not believe he could design a perfect society. He believed in something more modest and more urgent, that the future should never rule the present, that no theory absolves cruelty, and that the first duty of a free society is to remember that it might be wrong. In the next video, we'll look more closely at what Popper meant by historicism, and why he believes some of humanity's most dangerous ideas come disguised as knowledge. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more work on Karl Popper, and on the ideas that shape power, history, and freedom, you can like the video and subscribe.